My goodness gracious. Um, Let me see if I can get it going here. Today I'm talking about this idea of something here. Just a second. Come on, stop it. There we go. Okay. And this iPad has a mind of its own, so we're going to get it there. Okay. There we go. Have I created my enemies? Have I created my enemies? And you know we could make this very short. Yes, you have. Let's go down and eat, okay? But anyway, we're not going to do that. I don't appreciate that, but it's okay. It's all right. Uh, we do a good job of creating our enemies. There are lots of different types of enemies. You know, sometimes we think life is an enemy. Sometimes we think our neighbor is an enemy. Sometimes we might even think our children's actions are enemies. And we've gotten so we can really define this idea of an enemy. Matter of fact, we've gotten pretty good at it. In the dictionary, it says that an enemy is a person who is actively opposed or hostile to someone or something. And it can be something. Here are the synonyms: opponent, adversary, foe, arch enemy, rival, antagonist, combatant, challenger, competitor, opposer. Goes on and on. And what we've really gotten good at is we can call a whole country an enemy and actually believe it if we're not careful. And yet, Oscar Wilde said this: always forgive your enemies. Nothing annoys them so much. But I love what Abraham Lincoln said: do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends? How true. Do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends? And one of the things is that Jesus gave us some instruction on this. And it doesn't take a lot of interpretation. It's right straight out as he talked about it. He first of all told them that the Father, or Abba, as he said, makes the sun rise on the good and the evil, and sends rain on the just and the unjust. And what that's saying is we're all created equal. We all are treated equal in the eyes of that which created us. That we make up and create illusions about that. That we think people are enemies. But that God, that which created us, that spirit, that energy in the universe, treats everybody equally. And if we are created in God's image, and if we want to be expressions of God, then we have to learn to treat everybody equally. And that is hard. We were talking about it in the Course in Miracles this morning. It's a hard thing to do. It's difficult. It's challenging. But Jesus did give us some instructions. He said, love your enemies. Bless them that curse you. Do good to them. Do good to them who hate you. That's it. Okay, I had it wrong down here. And then he said, and pray for those that despitefully use you or persecute you. Now, that doesn't take a whole lot of thinking to figure out. I mean, there are parts of the Bible where you really have to dig in and metaphysically figure out what they're talking about. But this is not an idiom. This is not something. This is just Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount saying, this is what you need to do to be an expression of the Father, to be expression of God, to be expression of that which created us. Be created in the image and act like that you are in the image of that which created us. Mahatma Gandhi said, whenever you are confronted with an opponent, conquer him with love. And Jesus said the first thing you do is love what you perceive to be your enemy. And when you start to love somebody who is your enemy, that enemy begins to be destroyed. Martin Luther King said it like this: there is a final reason, I think, that Jesus said, love your enemies. It is this, that love has within it a redemptive power. And there is a power that eventually transforms individuals. Just keep being friendly to that person. Just keep loving them, and they can't stand it too long. Oh, they react in many ways in the beginning. They react with guilt feelings, and sometimes they'll hate you a little more at that transition period. But just keep loving them. And by the power of your love, I lost my place. By the power of your love. Just know, here we go. Sorry about that. They react with guilt feelings, and sometimes they'll hate you a little more at the transition period. But just keep loving them, and by the power of your love, they will break down under the load. They'll break down under the load. That's love, you see. It's redemptive. And this is why Jesus says love. There's something about love that builds up and is creative. There's something about hate that tears down and destructive. So love your enemies. It took me a long time to learn how to do that. I used to feel like I was Charlie Brown. And all my friends, except for a few, were friends. But that I had the Lucys in my life. You know how Lucy is. You know, she tells Charlie Brown what a loser he is. You know. Charlie tells her his problem, and she says, "What's the matter with you? Get over it." That's my kind of counseling. And so anyway, I had these Lucys in my life. First time that I remember a Lucy showing up was I was working with this guy. We were supposed to work together. He was not my boss, but he thought he was my boss. And boy, I didn't like that. And the more he thought he was my boss, the more I created this situation where he wanted to be my boss. And I think he was really trying to help me, but I couldn't see it then. I couldn't experience it then. And that was the first Lucy that I remember in my life. And, you know, I went to another job, and that rascal followed me there. He just had a different face, different body, but he was right there, being the Lucy in my life. As a matter of fact, in that case, he happened to be my boss. And he would give me a fit. And one day, I ordered him off his own property. I got so upset with him, okay? And he left, which was kind of neat, because I was running that piece of property. But anyway, we would really get in each other's face. It was not a healthy relationship. It wasn't one I was growing in. It was one I was becoming cemented in. You see, I was justifying and understanding this guy was my enemy. I wouldn't have called him my enemy, but he was in my thinking, in my consciousness. And then I went on another job, and I had an enemy. He was helpful to me. I was actually his boss, and he taught me a lot about myself. And at times he did it very gently, and at times he didn't. But I still, when he wasn't gentle, saw him as my enemy. Couldn't understand why he would treat me that way or talk to me that way. And so I let this Lucy in my life continue to fester up, continue to be a part of who I was. I went on another job, started my own company, and there was a Lucy. There was a Lucy that I used to have to take him out to a restaurant so we could talk because we would yell at each other in the office. Now, I don't know which one was a child, but I think I was, and I was responding to him like a child. But that's the truth. I had to take him to a restaurant so we could actually talk so we wouldn't yell at each other. It got that bad. That was a Lucy in my life. He was trying to teach me something, but I couldn't see it. And then I went into Unity. And do you know, Lucy showed up again in Unity of all places? Couldn't believe it, in El Paso, Texas. He was on the finance team. And boy, did we have some times. And everything he said I took personally, which wasn't what he really was saying, as I found out in time. And so then I read this book called Radical Forgiveness, which says that really everybody in your life is supposed to be there, and those that appear to be your enemy are really your friend and are teaching you something if you're willing to learn. And I said, wow. And so I started to see this person as my friend, as my teacher. And it didn't stop particularly in the finance team meetings, but what happened was I started to receive it differently. And what I did was I took him to coffee. I'd meet him at coffee at this bagel shop we both loved. And we would have coffee, and I got to know him. And one of the things I learned about him was that he had two businesses, and both of them had gone bankrupt. And so I understood why he always thought the church was going bankrupt. Had nothing to do with the church, had nothing to do with me. had everything to do with his experience. And so he was really hyper and very, very concerned about that and would use those kind of words. And as I started to understand that and started to see him differently, we were able to talk, and the finance team meetings, lo and behold, were pleasant because Richard didn't react to what I thought was the Lucy in my life. And ever since then, there has not been a Lucy in my life. Now, in the 9 o'clock service, one board member came up to me and said, I thought sure you were going to identify me as the Lucy. And some of the board members probably know who that is because he jokes that way. But anyway, that's not true, obviously. So Jesus gave these instructions to us. Love, first of all, he said. The second thing he said is that what we need to do is bless them that curse you. Bless them that curse, or what we think are cursing us. And Joel Osteen says it this way. One of the main reasons that we lose our enthusiasm in life is because we become ungrateful. We let what was once a miracle become common to us. We get so accustomed to his goodness, it becomes a routine. We don't see the miracle in the other person. We get trapped in life in such a way that we begin to create habits. And when somebody says or does a certain thing, we react a certain way because we think we're going to get a certain kind of reward for it, and then it doesn't happen, and we're disappointed. But we don't learn from that. We're cued again. And when we're cued, what happens is we react with the same habit, and nothing changes, and we wonder why. So we have to change. We have to be willing to see the miracle. And in unity, the miracle is the encounter, the holy encounter. When you behold the Christ, when you see God in somebody else, no matter what they look like, no matter how they're acting, no matter what they're doing, you know that truly there is the Christ within, there is the Spirit of God within that person, there is good within that person, and maybe they just don't know it in the moment. But if you start to see it, as Martin Luther King said, if you start to love the person, if you start to bless them, then the load of love and blessing will work in such a way that they cannot withstand it. I believe that with all my heart. I know that because I've seen it happen. That love conquers fear. Blessings say, I love you, I'm blessing you. And you can actually say it to the person if you need to. And so we look at these blessings, and there's another statement here. God doesn't bless us just to make us happy. God blesses us to make us a blessing. Take that in. You are a blessing. Sitting here right now, you are a blessing. When you go out the door, you are a blessing. When you're driving, you are a blessing. And everybody around you is a blessing, no matter how they act, no matter how they drive, no matter how they show up, they're blessing you. And that's a hard one, okay, sometimes, I know. Because we want to wave at them with just one finger, and that's not good. And so we want to bless people with all 5 fingers, okay? The next thing Jesus said is do good. And boy, this is one that can be difficult if we think the person's an enemy. John Wesley, the theologian, said, do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can. Good. Be the good. Do the good. That's action. So when you love somebody and you bless them, then you're able to step in and support them, not because you feel sorry for them, not because you're so good that you have forgiven them because they did something wrong to you, and that makes you holier than they are in your eyes if you're not careful. It's not any of that. It's because you want to support each and every person in the way they need to be supported so that they have opportunity. They can complete life. They can feel peace. They can feel joy as you feel peace and joy. And you see, when we do that, we bring them out of the storm. We bring them into the eye of the storm. And that's what it's all about. So when we love them, when we bless them, and we do good, we act out that love and that blessing, then we can make a difference in the world. We're growing into that here. We're doing a much better job of being a church without walls here than we've ever done before. I'm convinced of that. But we've got more to do. And certainly an evidence of that is Caritas this week. As we open our hearts and our minds and our doors to everybody. One of the things I love about Caritas is that the average person in Caritas, even though they're without a home at this time, within 45 days will probably be in a home and maybe have a job. They're really supporting people, growing people. Isn't that wonderful? And that's what we're supporting as we do this. And saying thank you, God, to them for being here and blessing us as they are here this week. The Dalai Lama said it's not enough to be compassionate. You must act. We must take action. 2 phases in healing. One is to heal ourselves. Some of you know what I mean. You came in these doors and you were hurting. Something in your past, something was bothering you, maybe in the present moment. And you started to feel a light. You started to sense something in a different way. You started to stop seeing life as something against you but for you. You started to understand we can live life abundantly. You found a group of people who loved you no matter what, under any conditions. That does exist here. And that's the healing that takes place within ourselves. There is another part of healing that sometimes if we're not careful we can miss. Because you see, once we feel healed, we stop coming for a while, sometimes. And that's not a judgment. I'm just saying we do. And what we find is that after a while, we got to come back because the healing needs to take place again. But that's all internal. That's all self. Nothing wrong with that. We got to get there. But true, I think the ultimate in healing takes place when we serve others. When we find a way to step out into the community, into the world, into the church, whatever, and serve others. Because the healing takes place and continues to take place in you, and you feel like you're living in the eye of the storm. You feel the peace, you feel the joy, you feel life more abundantly. And sometimes people miss that part. And that's why we want to be this church without our walls. A church that serves and supports and loves people unconditionally. And then the next thing Jesus said is to pray. So he said love and bless and do good and pray. Now, in Unity, we have a 5-step prayer method. And it is relax, contemplate, meditate, have a realization, and then be thankful. Doesn't have to be in that order, but that's usually what we talk about. That's what we teach. But you know, when you're in the middle of something, when the enemy is staring you in the face, Jesus says pray. Well, I would say to you that you can't in that moment go, okay, everybody relax. Okay, now let's just close our eyes and contemplate the fact that we are at peace with each other. I guess you could do that, but they'd probably have gone by then. And then you say, let's meditate together. Feel that silence? Feel that good? And then, oh, what did you realize? Well, I realized you're my friend. And I am thankful for that. Well, that's a wonderful thing, but what we have to learn to do is be prayed up so that when the enemy, or what we think, and it's only a thought, what we call the enemy shows up, we can identify the enemy as not the enemy. You see, we have these cues that I talked about a while ago. There's a cue that says you are the enemy. As soon as I feel that cue, I can do one of two things. I can judge you. I can react to you. I can blame you. I can say I'm the victim. I can go through all kinds of stuff. And it's in that moment that when I have the cue that I change my habit and my behavior. Instead, through the power of prayer and by being prayed up, I see you as my friend. I see you as my teacher. I see you as the one who's come into my life to help me live life more abundantly, to understand myself better, and to get myself, if you would, on the right track if I need that. I see in you a mirror. And when I see that mirror, I see myself. So if I'm judging somebody as my enemy, I must feel like I'm my enemy at times. And I need to look at that. If I judge somebody and say they're not really as loving as I think they should be, I must not be as loving as I think I should be. And I have to look at that. I have to own that. And it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean that you have to judge yourself. It just means it is what it is, and I can change it by changing my habit. And when I change my habit, then I start to get the result I want. I don't want to be separated from anybody, and I'm sure you don't either. I don't want to feel like I'm better than anybody. I'm sure you don't either. I don't want to feel like that I am a truth student, and I got the answers. And you haven't gotten there yet. That's not the idea. The idea is that I'm standing as an expression of God, which means I see that person equally. I see that person in a way in which I can love them and bless them and do good with them. And I don't have to always do good for them. I can do it with them. Isn't that cool? And that's what happens here as we work together. So what we have to do is be all prayed up. Woodrow Noel, a minister, said that fervent prayers produce phenomenal results. You have the power to produce phenomenal results. And it's so simple. Jesus told us. Be in love with yourself so you can love others. Be good to yourself so you can be good to others. Bless yourself so that you can bless others. And pray. Go internally, because that's where it all comes out. That's where it happens. It's an inside job. And when you know it's an inside job, then what you know is that when you get a cue, that you can have a different perception of what that person is. I really don't any longer have Lucy's in my life. I'm really blessed. I mean, it only took me 70 years to get there, but I am blessed, you know. And so I look at life in such a way that every person is here to bless me, to help me, to show me the way. And I try to listen to that. And at times I have challenges, but I've cued myself in such a way that I have a different habit in how I see it. And I know you do too, because I know you. And so come into the eye of the storm. And when you come into the eye of the storm, you bring others into the eye of the storm. And as we create in the eye of the storm, we create heaven on earth. We start to understand that heaven is within us and shows up as us when we release the enemy and accept the friend. God bless and thank you. And then we have some affirmations, and I'm going to go over to this side because I can't read them over there. But anyway, we affirm a summer like we've never had before. And you know, we're having that summer. Things are happening. Let me give you some examples. For example, the first one is growth in attendance at both services.